Housekeeping first. Next week in chapter 11, you're going to have an assignment that's going to be a little more time consuming. It's already open, so you can spend extra time if you want. Read the instructions carefully. Also remember your gallery artist analysis or assignments and the final review. Now, we're combining 3 chapters this time. And in chapter 8, we're going to be looking at art and how artists portray their identities. Genealogy is a favorite pastime of mine when and if I have any extra time. My aunt on my mother's side of the family was the history tracers. Um, she used the internet, wrote letters, traveled to meet possible relatives, and compared the stories that traced that side of my family back many, many generations. On my father's side, family lines were traced to 17th century Wales. Now, right after my son was born, I found out that my dad's great great grandfather's name was David Evans, and he was born on June 11th. My son, David Evan, was also born on June 11th, but over 100 years later. Sometimes a genealogy search can turn up some pretty wild and weird things. For me, I've already told you my family is my number one thing. For me, my family is my identity. It's my past, it's my present, it's my future. I may not have the same worldview as my ancestors did, but they are what makes me. So we're going to see how artists portray the types of identities that we identify with. So with that said, this is probably the shortest explanation for a chapter that you've had. It's really good information. I encourage you to really dig into it further for fun. Now, chapter 9 is going to talk about art and power. Did you know that art has power? It does. And it has the power to make us happy or sad. It has the power to express our emotions. It's got the power to persuade others to see our viewpoints. And in chapter 9, we're going to see a number of topics that will really hit home in this day and age. We're going to be looking at art and power, its power, propaganda, politics, and persuasions. Now we're going to get into some issues that have been happening recently. Statues being torn down because they offend people. And I would just like to interject one thing here. You take it for what it's worth. I'm not trying to make you think my way, but if people are going to start tearing down statues and getting rid of artwork because they offended someone, for example, a number of states have removed statues of Christopher Columbus because they're unhappy with the way he treated the indigenous people. Well, if we're going to do that, then we better look long and hard at our other heroes and even at ourselves, because one of our presidents was instrumental in promoting the attitudes in this country that led to the Trail of Tears and thousands of indigenous people being stripped of their land and moved to places where they didn't want to be, all because the European descendants wanted that land. So as we go through chapter 9, please keep an open mind. You may have some very strong feelings one way or another, but I think we have to be careful that we're not getting rid of stuff because if it's offensive. Maybe instead we should be taking those things and learning from them. Off my soapbox, and we'll go on into chapter 10. Now in chapter 10, we're going to look at art and its place in ritual life. Again, could be a touchy subject. Now, a ritual is defined by Merriam-Webster as of or relating to rites or rituals. In other words, something ceremonial, something that is according to religious law, something done in accordance with social custom or normal protocol, the established form for ceremony, or an act or series of acts that get regularly repeated in a precise manner. Now, if you go to church, your church probably has some sort of a set routine that you go through on a Sunday by Sunday basis. And that's going to vary from church to church and denomination to denomination. But it also applies to a lot of other things. We could take this chapter and we can make an entire class out of it. In fact, if this chapter perks your interest, East Central has some religion courses that you might want to look at. Now, everybody has rituals. I do in the morning when I get up and I'm getting ready to go to work. I have my coffee. I watch the morning news, catch up with emails and Facebook, play a couple of my brain strengthening games, and then I start getting ready. And I have a set order in which I do things to get ready for the day. I know that's probably more information than you really wanted to know, but it just goes to show what creatures of habit we are. Those of you who play sports, maybe you have a lucky shirt or pair of lucky socks. You might put on your uniform in a certain order every single time. And I don't know if you've ever really watched baseball on TV. Almost every player has some sort of routine or ritual when they come up to bat. And they go through that ritual before every single pitch. Maybe they adjust their gloves. Maybe they flip their bat. Maybe they touch home plate. And they do it every single time. A basketball player may bounce a basketball a certain number of times before shooting a free throw. And they do that every single time. It really is kind of interesting to watch people's rituals and their routines. Maybe you can identify as we look at the role of art in ritual life.